Is your family tree a mystery? Are you fascinated by genealogy? Well, hip hip hooray, let's talk DNA with Julie.
The truth is in your genes.
In CutOff Genes.
Welcome to CutOff Genes, the podcast that helps you find your truth using nothing but DNA. I'm Julie Dixon Jackson, and I'm a genetic genealogist, henceforth known as a Gen Genie.
And I am Richard Castle, the producer and co-host of this podcast. How are you doing, Julie?
Hot.
I know. It's so hot. Guys, again, I know I've said this before, but if you hear a persistent hum in the background, it is my air conditioner.
You know what? I can never hear it.
Really?
When I listen back, and even when I keep identifying planes that fly over, you can't hear it, so I probably shouldn't do that.
Really? Because I can hear it in my headphones. I'm wearing headphones, and I can hear it right now, a little
Can
hum.
you hear the humming?
Yeah, I hear it, or unless you're humming.
Well,
In a baritone voice.
That's the right pitch, right?
It's pretty good.
Yeah. I have everything, but I have, in this case, tinnitus.
Oh, uh-huh.
Which is not pronounced tinnitus, apparently.
Really? I've always said tinnitus.
I have too, but I was corrected.
Oh.
So every noise is white noise to me because I have a constant ringing in my left ear.
Oh, wow. How do you sing?
I don't know.
That's so weird that you're able to block that out and sing, because your pitch is pretty perfect.
It's something that I developed in the last couple years.
Yeah.
It's trauma related.
I know, but you've sung my demo recordings,
I know.
and your voice is as good as it has ever been.
I don't know. Maybe it's I don't know.
Who knows?
You know what? I can sing over anything.
I just saw a little video of Kristen Chenoweth, and she was like backstage waiting to go on, and there was some little smoke alarm going off, and she was harmonizing with it.
I love it.
It was great. She was saying the same pitch, and then she sang like a third above, and then she did like a whole thing, and she was in perfect pitch with it.
Wow.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah. Summer may be over for all of you folks, but here in Los Angeles, it's just beginning.
So yeah, when Labor Day comes, the kids go back to school and summer happens.
Yeah. So if you hear silence, it just means Julie and I have got the vapors.
Maybe we should have mint juleps.
Oh, we should have mint juleps. We've got to start recording this later, like at cocktail hour.
5 o'clock somewhere.
Right? Exactly. So what's going on with DNA news, Julie?
Oh, gosh, all sorts of different things. I got a corrections corner.
Oh, good.
This is kind of going back a ways, and we probably shouldn't really revisit this, but I'm going to anyway.
Of course you are.
Yeah, remember our friend Nikki France?
From France?
Yeah, Nikki, who lives in France.
Yes.
Apparently, they are very behind on their listening and just listened to episode 16, in which you were talking about The World According to Garp.
Oh, the movie, yes.
Yes.
Robin Williams, Glenn Close. Great movie.
Yes. Well, she is apparently an Irving aficionado.
John Irving, the man who wrote the book.
author,
yes.
Correct. And so it drove her nuts, or them. I'm sorry, I can't remember if it's a man or a woman. But there was something I guess you said that Garp's mother climbed on top of Garp's father when he was in a coma.
In the movie, yes.
Yes. Oh, in the movie, maybe it's okay. Oh, well, now maybe this is going to be
maybe
a
it's
debate.
not a correction, because
Okay. Right.
It's an erection corner, because she actually in the movie she climbed onto a man who was in a coma, who was dying, and he had an erection, and she was able to have a child.
Okay,
from it.
what she is saying is that he was not in a coma. He was dying.
All right.
She said, I knew right away that you were mistaken about the coma part, because I remembered that when he climaxes, he says, good.
Oh, see, that's in the book. That is definitely not in the movie.
Aha.
Yeah, I would remember that.
Okay. Yeah.
Because you never forget a good orgasm.
Oh, my gosh.
I think the last one I had, a good one, was like in 1989.
Oh, Lord. So there you go, Nikki France. Maybe there's a differential. Maybe you need to watch the movie. Maybe, once again, I still haven't watched the movie because who has time?
I bet I could even find that scene on YouTube somewhere, because she talks about it. She literally tells Garp the story about
We could do it
how-
on a break. Yeah. All right. Okay. So That's the only correction I have. Everything else has been perfect.
You know, if you have to go back to like episode 16 to correct something, and we're on episode 69 right now, that means we've got 30. What does that mean? How many episodes?
53.
53 episodes without
I love and
another
hate us
correction.
simultaneously.
I know, right?
Okay.
And I didn't even have to pull out the calculator for that.
Ooh, this is fun. Listen to this. Ireland has implemented a system where people can write time capsule messages to their descendants when they can access their census in 100 years.
Really?
Yeah.
So, like, you can leave a message?
Yeah.
Wow, leave a message at the tone. It's slower
love that, though.
slower than the Pony Express.
Yeah. It's literally 100 years from now, because that's how long they hold on to the census.
And who are you
in
leaving
Ireland.
it to? Like, you don't even know.
To your descendants.
I know, but
Yeah.
it's not like you can even say, well, a specific person, because any baby that would be born on the day that you make it most likely would not even be alive to that.
Do you have anything specific that you would want to say?
You know, I'd have to think about that. I mean, there's nothing. I'd have more questions than.
Well, you're not going to get them answered.
Right.
So, for me, in thinking about what I want them to know, that there are certain things that may be in the records that are not true. If they are so researching us. Yeah, because that would be something that comes directly from me. Of course, because I'm a genealogist, I'm going to pass all this stuff down anyway and hope that somebody keeps it going, and
Right.
as its own time capsule.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting, though.
I wonder if I'd be crotchety and just say something like, "Get plenty of sleep."
Make good choices.
Well, you make good choices. A friend of mine's grandpa used to just, give his advice to my friend, and he'd say, "Never get old and never get sick." I'm like, oh, thanks, Grandpa. I'll try that.
That's inspiring.
It's setting a high bar. But, it's funny because anything that you might say today is immediately going to sound dated in 100 years,
Yeah, but that could be the charm of it.
Yeah, possibly.
Like old movies.
Yeah, that's true. I'll tell you this little story. And I don't even know if this really relates to what we're talking about, but like when my mom died, and I never thought about like what was going on in the news at the time, because it was just, everything was all about that. But I remember my stepdad saying to me, "Well, now your mom knows, who killed Lacey Peterson." Whether that Scott Peterson was guilty. And again, this was like a crime that was in the news at the time.
Yeah.
Whether this man had killed his wife or not, or was whatever. And I just remember thinking, is that what she's really concerned about now that she's gone? Like, that's the first thing that she's going to go, oh, good, now I can find out if that murder, like, wouldn't all of
that was the first thing on her mind.
Wouldn't all of that seem like completely superfluous to the fact that you're in the afterlife?
Maybe he was thinking that once you cross that line, that you have complete absolution and you know everything automatically.
Possibly. But it was that specific instance of knowing that I thought was such a weird thing. Like, do you think she really cares about that?
Funny.
Or that she would want to know, like, maybe more secrets of the universe?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or something else. I don't know.
It tells you what was on his mind at the time.
Exactly. It sort of threw me at the time.
Yeah, that's weird.
But in the same respect, the reason I thought of that is that, like, anything I say now, I could say, "Oh, watch out for the politics or whatever." They would just go, "Oh my God, that's 100 years ago."
Yeah.
Look at what they were concerned about. Like, yeah. It's like 100 years ago, somebody would have said, that horrible teapot dome scandal. Don't let that happen again. And we're like, what?
What happened to the teapot? And its dome.
It was a dome home with a teapot?
A dome home?
I know a friend who actually moved into a dome home.
Do you?
Yeah, he built one out in, like, oh God, Pioneer Town, which is out near Palm Springs.
Is it like a yurt?
No, I mean, it's a dome home. Like, you build it like out of a box, like the dome in Epcot.
Okay.
that, but not as big.
Okay.
And you live in it.
Really not as big?
Yeah.
Who knew?
It seems like something you would have done in the 70s. Like, let's have a dome home.
Yeah, it's kind of a throwback.
Yeah, but he did it like within the last 10 years.
It's like something that you would do at Burning Man.
Yeah, it's like I'm going to go to an ashram or something. Like it just seems so like 60s. Like, oh, I'm going to go and be a flower child and live in an ashram. And
I think dome homes could be a good answer to help the homeless.
yeah?
Yeah.
Why specifically dome homes? Because they're so easy to
Yeah.
build? Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess if they
We
were...
have lots of empty land.
Yeah, do we?
Well, I see a lot of it when I start heading out towards the desert.
Yeah, so you want to put all the homeless people in a big dome in the desert?
Well, maybe with some air conditioning. Have I dug myself into a hole here?
I think you have.
All right, fine. Let's move on.
All right.
Okay, here's a timely story that kind of reminded me of something happened yesterday that reminded me of it. So an Australian man, William Hammersley, he doesn't want to die as an adopted person. He's one of a small but growing number of adopted adults who are seeking to have their adoptions discharged or voided decades after they occurred.
Weird.
So that's a thing that you can do in Australia now. He's dying of cancer, and so he's applied to the courts to have his request expedited. He doesn't want to live as an adopted person, and he certainly doesn't want to die as an adopted person. When he does die, he wants his correct identity on his birth certificate.
Wow. I mean,
Yeah.
that means a lot to him, apparently.
Yeah. Yeah. Most adoptees seeking a discharge are doing so because of an abusive childhood, obviously. For me, I think this is legit, and I understand, and I think everybody has a right to their original identity. Mm-hmm. I don't feel a need for that myself because I love my parents, and,
Sure, but I mean, the other part of that is like what it's all your identity is, as far as legally, is what someone gave you.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at identity as something much more personal, like something that is me, that is only mine, that I can only give myself.
And that's basically what you've done with
or
your
that's
life.
God-given. It's within me from the day I was conceived, you know? But as far as the name, I mean, I could change my name if I want to.
Yeah.
Right?
Even if you weren't adopted.
Right. I could just go to the court and say I want to be, Joe Schmo.
Yeah.
Well, that's not a bad
That would
idea.
be fun.
But no, I'm not trying to make light of what he's saying. It's just interesting how people see their identity. And again, I am not adopted, so I don't have that issue to think about. But to me, the name I was given as an adoptee would be just as fake or phony as the name I was given at birth, because it's given to you by somebody.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
Yeah, I see your point there. Also, I mean, if I felt that way, there are a lot of people that think because I searched for my biological family, I wanted to replace my parents.
Right.
And, which is a very hurtful thing to say.
Sure.
And in fact, I kept my father's surname after I got married to honor my father who raised me.
Right.
And I named my daughter after my mother.
Right.
So, I take issue with people accusing me of anything like that, or other people. But also, if a person feels that way, I believe they have a right to do whatever they want.
For sure.
Yeah.
And it's funny because then that also brings up the issue of what is family. Is it your the people who are related to you by blood, or is it the people who raised you, or is it the family that you chose to have around you? Because a lot of people who have been rejected by their family, if they left a religion, or if they were gay, or if they whatever, they got thrown out of the house, married someone that the family didn't approve of, whatever, and then they create their own family, around them. So what is that? What does that mean to you?
Well, I think there's a difference between that and truth. And to me, truth is the most important thing. It doesn't, just because my truth is my parents are not the people that raised me, doesn't mean, I don't have a family connection with the people that are my biological people necessarily.
Right.
And I do more so with my adopted people, but I still like for the facts to be there.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's sort of that's a very human thing to want to know where you came from. Mm-hmm. But as far as regarding like what family is and what your identity is, that is very complex.
And it is. It's so complex, and it's such a convoluted conversation.
I mean, think about your own life. I mean, before you were married and had kids, I mean, I know you were the same person. I knew you before you were married and had kids, but your identity has sort of changed, right?
Absolutely.
Because you are this person's mother and this person's wife. And not only that, but like in addition to what you were.
Right. It's layers.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's well, maybe this isn't even what we were talking about, but I find it fascinating. The whole issue of what does your identity mean to you, and how do you identify yourself?
Well, it's very timely now, obviously.
Yes.
With what's going on in
Yes.
the world. I just want to touch on this. Not all adoptees have terrible stories. Many had wonderful lives and loving families. But the ones that still want to discharge say it's because they feel like they were seen as chattel or a possession. And I get that.
Oh, sure.
There's money exchanged.
Bought and sold,
and,
yes.
Yeah. The laws governing a discharge vary across states, and South Australia's are the most progressive following a change in legislation last year. In every case, the adoptee has to prove why something decided for them as a child should be discharged. Wow. Now adoptee rights and adoption reversal are pushing for no fuss, no fault, no fee discharge, similar to a no-fault divorce.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back and petition my 7th grade science teacher to give me a B instead of a C. She kept me off the honor roll.
Clearly you're holding on to that.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Let's
I
get a
want
discharge.
I want my record expunged.
Oh, wow. Wow.
I was a good student, Julie.
I absolutely believe
It's the
that.
only C I ever got.
You were wronged. Dang.
Not that science was my strong suit, but I mean, I do remember being, I was out sick for like a couple of weeks with something at the time. And
Mono?
Unfortunately, there was no way I could have gotten mono in 7th grade.
You don't get it just from kissing.
Oh, well, then maybe it was. I don't remember what the hell
It's
it was.
a myth.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to add something, and not to kind of take a left turn here, but the reason I brought this up, I've been sitting on it for a while, is that I noticed that somebody on my Facebook page mentioned that William Hammersley died yesterday.
Oh.
And I asked him, did he get his reversal? And he said he believes he did.
Oh, that's good.
So at least he didn't die not having completed that. So rest in peace, William Hammersley. Thank you for all that you have done for fellow adoptees and being a pioneer. Should we take a break?
Let's do that.
Okay.
If you're enjoying CutOff Genes, please subscribe, rate, and review. Now, back to Julie and me.
Okay, we're back.
Hello.
Hello. Let's do a listener question.
Why not?
I'll tell you why not.
No, as long as they're listening and asking questions, then we have answers.
Right. This is specifically, well, for a few people, but Jenna Robertson has been asking for a while.
Well, since Jenna was one of our interview subjects, I feel like we
feel obligated
to answer her questions.
To go back to this. Okay. So she's been learning a lot about genetic genealogy. She's still having a problem with the concept of a chromosome browser.
Oh, okay.
And why do we need it? And what exactly does it mean?
Well, I second that emotion.
Okay, so I'm gonna explain it like you're a 4-year-old.
Could you go up to maybe 5 or 6? So
Nope.
Nope.
All
right.
Okay, I'm going to try to explain it. And basically what I'm going to say is, okay, first of all, the reason I haven't really talked about it very much, and I don't talk about it very much, is that we focus on unknown parentage. And in cases of unknown parentage where you don't know anything about either side of your family, a chromosome browser is virtually useless.
Oh, well then.
Because you need something to start with.
Sure.
And I can't think of a time I used a chromosome browser to solve a case. Where it is beneficial is once you've built your tree out and back, and then you can start using it to identify what lines people match you on.
That makes sense.
Okay. So a chromosome browser visually interprets DNA data and places it so that you can see where on each chromosome a match overlaps.
Yes.
Thus sharing a segment of the same DNA.
Okay.
So as long as you know which line, maternal or paternal, that DNA comes from. Now you can use that as a guide for other matches. Okay?
Yes. So you know which side of the family it's coming from.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and which line?
Well,
ultimately.
yes.
Ultimately. Okay, I'm going to give you an example.
Please.
Yes, okay. I have a third cousin who I've discovered descends from my third great-grandmother, Marjorie Taylor's sister, Anne. Ann Taylor.
Ann Taylor.
Yep. So she was very stylish. So we share my second great-grandparents, his great-grandparents, John Taylor and Jane Chadwick. When I upload his DNA from GEDmatch to DNA Painter, which I recommend because it's the most visually pleasing and you can keep everything in one place.
This is the one that color codes everything so that you can see the lines better. Is that
Yes.
sort of?
Yes.
I mean, in the most basic way.
Yes, in a nutshell, yes. I can see when I upload it to DNA Painter, I can see that we match on portions of chromosomes 7, 10, 3, 11, and 12. That tells me that we're both inherited that part of our DNA from the Taylor and or Chadwick line.
Wow, that's
Okay.
so specific.
Right.
Yeah.
So when I get a new match that I've concluded is paternal, judging by who else he matches or that new match matches, I can upload their data to DNA Painter if they let me. If they happen to match both of us on any of those segments, we've successfully triangulated all three of us
Right.
as related through at least one of the Taylors or Chadwicks. Okay?
Okay.
But, and here's the but, here's a caveat, and I let Diane Southard say this. She's a genetic genealogist that's been doing a lot longer than me, and so I'm lifting the caveat from her.
What you got her in your bag or something?
Yeah, she's right here.
Okay.
Come on over, Diane. Diane is actually from, her hometown is the town that I lived in Washington, we discovered recently.
Oh.
That's neither here nor there. Anyway.
Well, it's definitely there. It's not here, and neither is Diane. So why don't we use her words?
So what she says is, thanks, Diane. Now, let's say you add a mystery match, like I just said, to see if he or she also shares that same piece of DNA. If they do share, you may conclude that this new match is related to that ancestral couple you share with your close cousins. It's a good thought and may sometimes work. But be careful. Using this technique with more distant matches, like third and fourth cousins, can be problematic. The more distant the shared ancestral relationship, the more unlikely that multiple cousins share the same piece of DNA because it's further away.
Right.
Shared DNA between multiple fourth cousins is less likely to point to a single recent ancestor and more likely the result of belonging to a shared population group, like endogamy. For example, perhaps you may all share Ashkenazi Jewish roots and you're looking at a very Jewish piece of shared DNA. So if you are Jewish, it could be a little more of an issue. I have 0 Ashkenazi. And I believe that a lot of my smaller matches are not noise. They actually are correct matches, and I'm citing through lines on Ancestry, which I'm going to talk about next week.
How can you be sure of that?
I can't be sure.
Yeah, that's
You
it.
cannot be sure, guys. But there's enough evidence to be reasonably sure because we're a DNA match, a very low DNA match, but we have the same people in our tree.
Okay.
So that's
Yes.
a pretty good sign
Right.
that I'm, on.
Odds are
Right.
Yeah, that it's right, that there is a connection there.
Yes.
But so you have to look at all of the evidence and not
Always.
You can't just look at the chromosome browser and go, oh, this is it.
Exactly.
Right. You have to have other corroborating evidence.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I understand that.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's like check your sources. You can't just have one source.
Right. So this
Then
is
it's
why.
a rumor. It's a rumor if it's only one source.
Rumor has it. This is why we should build our trees out as far as possible. Lots of people only include their direct line in their tree and aren't interested in siblings of their ancestors. That's super limiting. People don't realize that we share DNA with their siblings as well, and they come down. And so there are names that we don't know about
Right.
that share DNA with us. Here's an example. I have a match that I've had for years since before I found my paternal line. She's in New Zealand, and we only share 37 centimorgans, so we're about fourth or fifth cousins. Her tree is well researched, and I spent months trying to figure out where we connect. Coming back to it now, I see that because of our chromosome matching in a chromosome browser, she matches all my fissures.
So you know she's from that line.
And she has fissures in her tree in New Zealand. Now, even though her tree is well researched, and so is mine, we can't connect her fissures to my fissures. So mine are from Yorkshire. Hers are from somewhere else, Cambridge, I think. So we still don't know where our fissures connect, but we are reasonably sure, because 37 centimorgans is quite.
So in order to find that out, do you have to wait for some other relative to test so that you can connect it through somebody else?
Possibly, if they know. We've both. I mean, she has quite a bit of research pointing to her fissures being from this place.
Okay.
And I have taken that stuff and put it in my tree to try to connect hers to mine to see if we can find somewhere where they intersected.
I see.
And I have not been able to do that yet. I mean, we're talking, early 1800s.
Wow, you've gone back that far.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, the records are some things you're just never going to be able to figure out. Someday somebody may know something or may discover something, or a new record may become available that will explain it all.
Well, then you know what? Going back to our last segment when you said, what would you leave for your ancestors to read your descendants in 100 years? Hey, if you could figure out where we connect on that Fisher line from the 1800s, I would really appreciate that.
Could you be a little more specific? That's true.
Because, I died not knowing, and I think
it's driving me crazy. Oh,
from
my
beyond.
Gosh. Yeah.
But at least now I know who killed Lacey Peterson.
Good point. All right. So if someone contacts me wondering how we're related, I can upload their data, and if it overlaps with any of those chromosomes that I've already identified, I can tell them to look for, in this case, fissures in Yorkshire or Cambridge.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. I hope that helps Jenna a little bit, maybe.
Well, it made sense to me, and if it made sense to me...
It'll make sense to anyone.
The 4-year-old me.
Okay, let's take a break.
Thank you for listening to Cut Off Genes with Julie Dixon-Jackson and Richard Castle. That's me.
We're back.
Hello.
Hello.
I have a sudden corrections corner that I just remembered.
Ooh. Emergency corrections corner.
Emergency.
ECC.
Not that you would ever correct this because you would have no way of knowing, but I just remembered I did get another C. Remember, I told you about that science C in 7th grade. Somewhere in high school, I think I got a C in trigonometry. So I'm sorry, folks. I lied, or maybe I just pushed that so far back in my mind. But there was another C in my history.
Here's my question. Was that on your mind the entire time I was talking about chromosome browsers?
Yes.
Okay.
And the other thing is, I was thinking about the whole reason we do this podcast, and the truth is in my genes. I'm like, well, this truth is...
You have to tell the truth.
Yeah, I got to tell the truth.
I'm the same way.
I wasn't withholding it. It just, I remembered it while you were...
Full disclosure.
Yeah.
I'm that person too.
Yeah, I just want it out in the open so nobody goes, hey, wait a minute, like some friend listening to this from high school and said,
oh boy, you're going to get an angry letter.
Well, what's funny is because like a friend of mine from high school who I've not spoken to probably since my first year of college just contacted me on Facebook, and it was so nice to catch up and all that again. And I think, what if I tell him to listen to this podcast? Then he goes, wait a minute, Rich, you got a C in trigonometry.
Remember your C.
Well, I probably made a big deal about it at the time, tears and how did I get a C? I'm never going to make honor roll.
You had a tattoo to memorialize it. Okay.
So anyway, that's my corrections corner. I feel so much better. That's a load off of my mind.
Thanks for that.
Is it story time?
It is.
Oh, good.
A real story this time.
This is a real story.
I know.
It's just not that interesting.
Okay, so a few weeks ago, I was talking about a lady that I spoke with named Donya Williams. That is an expert on African American genealogy.
Oh, yes.
And you said you should have her on the show. And guess what?
Is this her?
I did it.
Oh, that's great. Well, look at this. You do listener requests, and now you do, co-host producer requests.
I've never been accused of not being able to take direction.
That's true.
Yeah, it is true. So this is Donya Papoose Williams, who is an author, and she does a podcast called Genealogical Adventures, I believe, with her cousin.
Okay.
And I think it's a video cast or a simulcast or something. I'm not exactly sure, but before this airs, I'll get a link or something to it. The reason
as I recall, the reason I asked you to get her on our podcast was because we were talking about how African Americans have a more difficult time researching their trees, because if you go back to slavery, they had to take on the names of the people who owned them,
exactly.
And so it was harder to, you would kind of hit that wall. And I thought that was so fascinating.
Oh, it is. And this is going to make it even more fascinating.
Oh.
Hold on to your seats, gang.
Oh, I can't wait to hear it. I'm so glad you got her on.
Okay. So here's Donya.
Donya Papoose Williams, welcome to CutOff Genes. Thank you so much for agreeing to talk to me today.
All right. Thank you for asking me.
Tell me a little bit about what prompted you to do your family history or become a genealogist.
What prompted me was the fact that my grandparents had 14 children, and my mom and them, they knew something about their mother's side, but they knew absolutely nothing about their father's side. So I thought it would be easy to research my grandfather because his last name was so rare, and that rareness has nothing to do with being easy. I figured that out very quickly, and I just went from there. And in my research, I have found so much information, and most importantly, I learned about history that our children are missing.
Right.
And it's just an awesome thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can give you this story about my two-time great-grandmother.
Sounds great.
We never knew anything about her. My mom, and this is on my grandfather's side. So my grandfather's last name is Yeldale. So that's my family. We are the Yeldales. Mm-hmm. But the thing about it, I thought it would be very easy because that's such a rare name. And it's always been said that if you have the last name Yeldale, then more than likely you're related. You're going to be blood. But there were white Yeldales and there were black Yeldales. So I was doing my research on my grandfather's side of the family, and I ended up going back to his father, which was Peter Yeldale.
Okay.
But as I was doing my research for Peter Yeldale, I actually found a Peter Brooks. And in finding Peter Brooks, I'm like, well, wait a minute. These people are the same age, just the regular genealogical research, family tree research. Same age, same year, same town. But why is his last name Brooks in 1870 and his last name Yeldale in 1880? So I sent off to where my grandparents were from, which is Edgefield, South Carolina. And I sent off to their archive. I sent off to this particular library that just houses so much information on African American research that it's a gold mine to anybody who's from that area. They sent me to the archives, and a woman by the name of Tricia Price Glenn, who was at that time working at the archives, did some research for me. And what she did was she found that the Peter Brooks and the Peter Yeldale were the same people, and that his mother, Martha Brooks, was actually enslaved by a very infamous senator by the name of Preston Brooks.
Oh.
She was actually enslaved by both his father and him. So I'm looking at this and I'm like, Preston Brooks. Why do I know that name? Well, Preston Brooks is the man that beat Charles Sumner on the Senate floor back in the 1850s.
Uh-huh.
Charles Sumner is the abolitionist that we were all taught about in school, but they never gave us the name of the man who caned him. And he beat him like so bad with this cane to the point where they held his Senate seat posthumously because he couldn't come back.
Wait a minute. He caned him. Give me a little more background on that story.
Well, it's called the caning, and anybody can Google it. Preston Brooks, the caning. Basically, what happened was Charles Sumner had given this speech on the Kansas-Nebraska Act, and he was really talking bad about the place of South Carolina, and Preston Brooks's uncle, some say uncle, some say cousin, but I believe it's his uncle, Andrew Pickens Butler. Now, we've heard these names in school. And so I'm looking at this, and as I'm reading all this stuff about it, it said that Preston was like, well, I'm confused. I don't know if I should confront this man and ask him, why did he say such hard things about my state and my family? Should I confront him as a gentleman, like smacking with the white glove, or should I just fight him? This was his, and I'm being very, very serious when I say this. This was his mindset. There was another senator by the name of Lawrence Keat out of Richmond. He told Preston he doesn't deserve gentleman's stuff. You should fight him. In so many words, this is what Lawrence Keat said to him. You should fight him. So there's this picture. And when you Google Preston Brooks, you'll actually see it. And you'll be like, oh, my God, is this what she's talking about? Because this caricature is in every history book. It is in every history book. And it is a picture of a man standing over another man, beating him with a cane with two other senators holding senators back. Now, it wasn't until I did the research that I learned that Lawrence Keat was actually holding a pistol to some of the senators, telling them, no, they got to fight this out.
So wait, was this in session? Was this while...
Yes.
Oh, my gosh.
Yes.
That's
this
crazy.
Is while in session. So when you Google it, you're going to be like, you are kidding me. This is your family. And so I'm looking at it and I'm reading it and I'm like, this is amazing. I connect to these people, but at that time it was just a connection because slave owner to enslaved.
Yes.
But then I started reading into his father's will. Well, in his father's will, there was a section that was missing, so I needed to call for it. So I ordered it. And when I ordered it, the section that was missing was actually talking about a group of 29 enslaved people that he was giving specifically to his wife. And she had specific instructions that they are to be given gifts annually. And he would go in depth on it in a personal memorandum to her. Now, as a researcher, as a genealogist, we all know that when they start getting specific and special, these people are related somehow.
Right.
As I've done my research, I do connect to the Brooks line. So Whitfield Brooks is my 3 times great-grandfather.
Wow.
Right. And Preston is my uncle.
So, and Preston is the one that did the caning?
Oh, my God, yes. And they loved him. South Carolina, it's so funny because as an African-American, you got people that really get into their feelings about the fact, yeah, you owned my family and I hate you for that. But this may sound really weird, but I freaking love him.
Oh, my gosh.
And I love him because I see how my family became who they are. I have uncles. In every generation of my family, someone has been in politics. I have one uncle who was appointed to the very first D.C. Council in D.C. That was done by, when D.C. Council was created, it was created by President Lyndon B. Johnson, and he appointed people. And my uncle was one of the first African Americans who was appointed on the D.C. Council. Then I have another uncle who was the undersecretary to the AFL-CIO, and he ended up receiving a letter from then Senator Kennedy to, if I become president, then I would like to have you on my cabinet. But my uncle died before that could happen.
Wow.
So it's just, just like, it's crazy. And then I see now this is not to say that my family is a fighting type of people, although we are, because
We've already talked about the caning.
right. But I see our mindsets. We are family oriented. We take care of each other.
Yeah.
And the reason why I think, relate to Preston so much is because even though that was the most horrid thing that he can do, let's look at the reason why he did it. He felt like he was protecting his family. You talked bad about my uncle. His actual words were, he walked up to Charles Sumner and he said to him, "You've libeled my state and you've talked bad about my older uncle. For this, you must perish."
Wow.
And he began to beat him.
Wow.
Then there was another time when Preston got into it because one of his nephews was killed by a man named Wickfall. And Edgefield, South Carolina, let me just say this, was known for their fights.
Okay.
The whole area, black, white, Native American, it didn't matter. They were known for fighting. They did not play games. It's actually something that's just, I think, in the DNA of anybody that's from there. They don't play games. And so Thomas Wickfall, I think his name was. I know his last name was Wickfall. I believe his first name was Thomas. He ended up being a senator for Texas. But Wickfall had gotten into this serious argument through the newspaper with Whitfield Brooks. Preston jumped in it and told him, "Stop sending messages through newspapers anonymously. If you got an issue, this is where I live." That's how he said it, literally, in just cutting it short. That's how he said it, because they were going back and forth. And he was like, "Look, I live here, and this is my name. Stop being a punk and come on out and do what you got to do," point blank. Well, at that point, Wickfall did make some statements in there, but Preston was like, "I said what I said, and that's that." He ended up going to, I believe, the Mexican War.
Okay.
And while he was at the Mexican War, this argument between his father and Wickfall kept going back and forth, back and forth. So Wickfall challenged his father, Whitfield, to a duel. Well, Whitfield was too old to be doing that. And so Whitfield's brother-in-law, who was friends with Wickfall, told him, he was like, he's too old for that. You shouldn't do that. And he was like, "Well, if he a punk, he a punk." He was like, "But he's not a punk. He just can't do the fighting." So at that point, Carol was like, his brother-in-law, which was a Carol, he said to him, "Well, I can't let you do this. Let's set it up so that you and I do the duel." So that's what was supposed to have been done. Duels were a friendly way of solving an issue.
Right. They were gentlemanly.
Yeah.
Right.
So this is what they were discussing on the courthouse steps in Edgefield. Well, while they're making this discussion, their nephew, Whitfield's nephew or grandson, which was Preston's nephew, Thomas Bird, walked up to the thing because Wickfall had placed on the Edgefield courthouse door in so many words that Whitfield was a punk, that he was scared, and he needed to come out here. This was his way of trying to draw him out. Well, Thomas Bird walks up and he said, "You're going to remove that from the door." And Wickfall said, No, I'm not removing anything. He said, "Yes, you are. If you don't remove it, I'm going to snatch it down." Wickfall said to him, "Well, if you snatch it, as soon as you snatch it, I'm shooting you." Long story short, Bird was shot and killed.
Oh, my God. Okay.
And because he tried to snatch it down and he shot it. So at that point, Preston heard about it. Preston came back from the war. And as Carol and Bird, they had their duel. They missed each other. They're on their way back. Preston meets them at a certain point and said, no, we doing this now. You killed my nephew. You talk bad about my dad. It's on and popping. That's it. We doing this. This duel went down as one of the top 100 duels in history. New York Times newspaper said that.
Oh my gosh.
They shot each other up so badly that's how he got the cane. Wickfall ended up in a wheelchair for a while. I mean, it was a really bad It was really bad. But these are reasons because he was protecting his family. He didn't walk across the stage. He didn't graduate from school because he went to the University of South Carolina. Mm-hmm. He didn't walk across the stage because he was told that his brother was being held by the police. He got into a shootout with him.
Okay.
You
can't make this stuff up. You're right.
You can't make this up.
So let me go back a little. Was the nature of the dispute based on abolition?
The nature of the disputes was based on family for Preston. It was all about family. I mean, Wigfall, if I'm not mistaken, he was a slave owner. The only thing that was based on abolition was the caning.
The caning, okay. All right.
The caning, there's a letter from a Senator Trumbull to Lincoln stating, after this caning was done, I think we have our war. A lot of people say that he's the reason why the Civil War happened.
Wow.
So it's just so much about Preston that it's not, I mean, I'm not happy that he owned my family. Trust me, I'm not. But in the same instance, there is a respect for him that I just cannot hide.
I'm saying this as a very naive white person. I can see how relationships would be formed even in slavery, and because family was family. And yeah. I guess slavery for some, if they were born into it, it was just so natural,
she was definitely born into it. The great thing about Edgefield is that the like I said, the records are awesome. Mm-hmm. The record keeping there was awesome. So, for example, you know how, well, I don't know if you've ever done any research on African Americans. One of the things that you hear is that we can't find our family.
Yes.
Because before 1870, we're not listed.
Right.
There are slave schedules, but they only list them by gender and by age. Mm-hmm. So it's very difficult for us to say, well, this is my grandmother, great grandparent, or this is my grandmother, or right. So on and so forth. It's very hard. Well, because Edgefield kept such great records, these people were naming their enslaved on the inventory list, like most inventory lists are.
Oh, I want to preface this part just by saying that you're an expert on Edgefield, right?
Yes.
And your book, tell me the name of your book.
The name of my book is Comes to the Light, Learning About the Entangled Families of Edgefield, South Carolina.
Right. And now we shall launch into Edgefield, South Carolina, and the significance basically it has for really the African American community, right? Right.
Yeah. Okay. It's an awesome spot.
And so goes the end of part 1 of Donya Papoose Williams.
Oh, wow. I can't wait to hear more.
Isn't she fun?
Yeah, she's a character.
Yeah. Wait till you hear what she says next.
Oh. I can't wait.
Okay. All right. So we're out of here.
I'm Richard Castle. You can follow me on the Twitter @CastleSongs, or you can go to my website, richardcastle.com.
Boom. I'm Julie Dixon Jackson. And you can find me on the Twitter @Jules Jackson with 2 O's. You can find the podcast @CutOff Genes Pod. Join the Facebook group, CutOff Genes Podcast. Hey, follow us on Instagram, even though I'm not very good at it.
Really? I don't even have Instagram.
Well, there you go. Yeah. That's why.
My dog is on Instagram.
How does your dog have Instagram?
He doesn't. But I went to a trainer, and the trainer has Instagram, and he took a little video of our little training session, and I went to his page, and I was able to see. I'm like, my dog is on Instagram, and I am not.
Well, good. I thought he had developed opposable thumbs.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Me neither.
I'm trying to train that out of him. Stop making crank calls, buddy.
Okay, one more thing. If you want to reach out to me, if you want to tell your story, you can email me, julesjackson@cutoffgenes.com.
Yes, and please do. We love our stories.
Okay, and one more thing.
What is it?
The truth is in your genes.